Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay in the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
And we welcome you to this edition of the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. I'm Eric Lopez. Jeff Sharon will join us later. He is still upset by the announcement of the Academy Awards, announcing that they will be going hostless for the second year in a row. He was very upset. He was hoping they would have a host. But he'll join us later. He'll calm down. He'll join us later on the show. But joining me now, a man who's I don't think is upset about that news item, even though the Oscars is a big thing to him, is our very own Brian Murphy. Murphy, you're not upset by that news, right?
No, the Oscars were great last year without a host. It was much more streamlined, much more smooth. No one cares about your bits or your jokes. Give me the awards. I don't care about the intersplicing of, like, cute celebrity stuff. Just give me the winners. That's all I want, and I think that show did a good job of that last year. And I do care about that, yes.
But you're in a posse. You and Jeff probably are on different sides of that, so that's okay. That's why you won't be together on the show. But we'll get along down the road. Coming up, folks, on this edition, you will talk about UCF men's basketball's loss to SMU on Wednesday night and their 0-3 start in the league. What does that mean moving forward? Plus some football news. Oh, we got title changes, some promotions in football. What does that all really mean in the big picture? Plus, later on, we're going to cover this MLS SUPERDRAFT, and we could have our very own Cal Jennings. Where did he end up? We're going to discuss that and all that coming up. Of course, you can follow us at UCF_Banneret on Twitter. Like us as well on Facebook. And, of course, go right now to blackandgoldbanneret.com. We have our all-decade series where we talk all UCF decades. We're going to be doing that constantly. We have the football and, of course, baseball and volleyball decade teams coming out. We're going to have softball, basketball, soccer coming up here in the near future, among other topics. And if you go there right now, you can check out exclusively Brian Murphy's recap of the UCF SMU basketball game, which is where we're going to start this show with, Murph. The Knights were on the road in Dallas against SMU and dropped an 81-74 decision to the Mustangs to drop to 0-3 in league play and have now lost 4 in a row. And you wrote about it, obviously, as I mentioned, it's on blackandgoldbanneret.com. Really, though, offensively played well. Cesar DeJesus had 19 points. Colin Smith, 19 points, was not in foul trouble compared to the previous 2 conference games. And Matt Milan with 19 points, breaking out 7 of 12 from the field. Unfortunately, SMU was really good. From 13 of 24 from the three-point line. Kendrick Davis, 22 points. Farron Hunt, 20 points as the Mustangs win 81-74. What's your takeaway from that game as you wrote about it? I know after the game in the recap. What's your big takeaway from that game?
That sometimes your shots fall, and when your shots falls, I mean, this is so simple, but when you make shots, you're more likely to win basketball games. And I know that sounds ridiculously stupid and just very basic level, but it's true. I mean, it's about making shots. And so with SMU team, which has been slightly above average on the season as far as from shooting three-point range, they shoot about 34% on the year, come into this game and hit 13 of 24, including, 5 guys with at least 2 threes. Farron Hunt, who you mentioned, he hit 2 threes in this game. He had not even attempted a three-pointer in SMU's previous 3 games and was 2 for 10 beyond the arc in his previous 7. So sometimes your shots fall. And when your shots fall like that they did on Wednesday night, you lose games. And I know there's more to it than that. We'll get into that. But really, the top line is when you give up 13 three-pointers or when the other opponent hits 13 three-pointers, you're not going to win much.
No, and I thought it was an interesting game. I was working the Magic Wizards game Wednesday night, so I didn't watch the game live. The game was on ESPN3, so I didn't have the luxury of putting the game on the monitor. The Magic games in the media section in the loge, they have a monitor. So I in the past, I would watch UCF games when they were televised. Well, obviously, the game was on ESPN3. I didn't bring my computer, etc. So I left the Magic game. And I made the mistake of checking out social media, and there, of course, I saw the reaction. You would have thought this was like, oh boy, this thing. I went back. The fans were flipping out, and oh my god, you would have thought we lost by 20. I went back to the when I got home. I watched the re-air after I finished doing with my obligations I had to do with the Magic Wizards game. I watched the game, and Merv, I thought it was a pretty good game. I thought offensively, it's one of the better games they've played offensively. And it was anybody's game with 10 minutes to go. It was a 1-point game, and then SMU. There was a couple of fouls called against UCF. I remember DeJesus with a foul where he fouled the 3-point shooter. Next thing you know, SMU goes on a run. They go up 9, and that was kind of the game. And I listened to Coach Dawkins' post-game with Mark Daniels on the radio, and he made an interesting point. And, you look at their 3 conference losses, they haven't played a full 40 minutes. We were both there when they played basically 35 minutes against Temple, and, the last 5 minutes cost them the game. The Houston game, he said, they played about 30 good minutes, and I'm going to paraphrase what he said about the SMU game. He thought they played about 33, 34 good minutes. Having rewatched that game, I kind of agree with him. I thought there was 2 parts of the game where they struggled. Unfortunately, it cost them the game. And that was the beginning of the game where they dug themselves a hole. I think they were down 12-0 to start the game. 13-0. But they came back from that, and then from the 10-minute mark to about the 6-minute mark, basically, they fell behind by 9. I thought there was those 2 little pocket stretches that cost them the game. Which obviously is unfortunate. They got to play a 40-minute game. Clearly, that's one of the things that I took away from. Obviously, you have to play a 40-minute game. But they didn't play that bad of a game at all at SMU in a road game. And again, SMU shot the ball really well. Let's give them some credit as well. We could talk about maybe their defensive struggles, but I think a lot of this was just good shot making by SMU, don't you think?
Yeah, I do think so. Now, I do think some of the threes came off of some perimeter defense that should have been tighter. And there were twice in which, you mentioned a little bit, but there were two times in which UCF did foul a 3-point shooter in the action, and that just can't happen. But yeah, I think it's just, again, it's shots fall, and when you make the shot, you win games. Simple as that. I thought, this game didn't follow the script of previous games where we talk about how, the offense isn't there. The offense wasn't there. They played good defense, but the offense wasn't there. Well, the offense was there Wednesday night. And, certainly Matt Milan having 19 points, hitting 5 3-pointers, it was good to see. You don't know if that sustains itself consistently over the rest of the season because shooting is fickle, but this is the Matt Milan we expected to see. So seeing that was uplifting. Seeing Colin Smith, who picked up a second foul with 7:33 to go in the first half, and then doesn't let that affect his game going forward and really took over the game early in the second half, that was good to see. However, there's always that stretch. There's always that point in which UCF has this elongated stretch where things go wrong and they sort of get out of hand. And usually it's been because the offense goes cold. And Wednesday was because, and you mentioned it slightly, it was during that midpoint of the second half, they closed within 1 after a Milan 3. It was 54-53 at about the 10:30 mark or 10:40 mark of the second half. And UCF at that point, I want to mention, was already in the 1-and-1 bonus. And they had only committed 1 foul on the other end. SMU, it should be noted, is a top 10 free throw shooting team in the nation. And then over the next 90 seconds, in which UCF had cut the deficit to 1, UCF commits 6 fouls in the next 90 seconds. All of a sudden, that advantage that you thought you could have had is wiped out. SMU is now in the 1-and-1 bonus. They get free throws. They hit a couple threes, and all of a sudden, what was 54-53 is now 63-53, and you're basically playing catch up the rest of the way, and there's just not enough time left, and you run out of time, you lose. It's just there's these things that you can see the potential of this team. You can see how they do play well for long periods of time, and then you can see why right now it's still a work in progress. There's always this 4, 5, 6 minute stretch where things just go wrong and they can't recover enough. And on this night, it was just about not playing or playing defense without fouling. You have to do that. And they just didn't do that for that one stretch, and it really cost them.
They did. Another key stat, the free throw line, you mentioned the fouls. SMU was 16 of 20 from the free throw line. You mentioned it. They are a very good free throw shooting team. It's really rare in college basketball. I think they have 3 guys on the roster shooting 85 or better, and they're one of the top, what was it, top 10, top 11, you said, in the country?
They entered the game 7th in the nation, and they're top in the AAC.
That's unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, they're a great free throw shooting team. And they went 16 of 20 from the line. UCF went 9 for 11. And that's been, at times, a theme this year. And, Coach Dawkins talked about it with Mark on the postgame show. But he has talked about this year, Brian. Sometimes his frustration with this team not getting to the free throw line a lot. I remember going back to December and some of those games where, like, the New Jersey Institution of Technology and even the Green Bay games, I remember you would ask him in the postgame about it, and he wasn't happy about getting to the free throw line. That's one of the reasons I think why is, one of the key recipes, trends that Coach Dawkins I've talked to him about in the past, and he's mentioned it in the past, and talking about it is the free throw battle. And not and people have focused over the years on UCF's free throw percentage and things like that, but a key stat is how many free throws UCF makes, trying to make more free throws than the opponent actually attempts. That's a philosophy there that Coach Dawkins has from going back from Coach Krzyzewski, who learned that from Bob Knight, who was the legendary head coach at Indiana and Texas Tech. And Coach Krzyzewski was an assistant with, they go back into the Army days, but Coach Krzyzewski at Duke. And that's been a kind of a key little note that they like to use as a philosophy to win games. And part of the philosophy there is it shows that your team is being aggressive and getting to the free throw line and that you're not fouling. That's why that stat's interesting. Let me read you a couple stats there about that. This year, after this game, UCF is 6-1 this season when they've made more free throws than the opponent has attempted. The only loss was that weird Penn game where they literally couldn't make a shot. That's really the best way we could describe that game, right? Is that a fair, quick synopsis of the Penn game? They just couldn't make a shot from the field, even though they had more attempts and free throws and field goal attempts in that game. It was just a weird. That
is true. It was also a game in which Darren Green gets basically sidetracked because there are 16 3-point lines on the court in Anaheim. Yeah.
When UCF has lost the free throw battle, like they did last night against SMU, they're 2-5 this year, or 3-5. Excuse me, 3-5 this season. Their wins were the Pepperdine game, the New Jersey Institution of Technology game, and the Green Bay game. Teams that inferior teams, but 3-5 when they have lost the free throw battle, and they're 0-3 in conference play when they losing all those free throw battles. Now you might say, well, is that just kind of a trend, just kind of a random thing? Well, let me go back to last year. I went to last year, a much better team. Would you agree with that? With more room for error, you would think a stat like that would not be as big of a factor with arguably the best team in the history of the program. Well, last year, UCF, when they lost the free throw battle like I described, they were an 8-7 team. They went 8-7. When they won that free throw battle that I talked about, they went 16-2. Think about the difference there. 8-7 versus 16-2. They're 2 losses, by the way, at Missouri, which, Murph, I think we talked about this on that podcast that when that game happened, they should have won that game. They kind of let that slip away in the final seconds, if I remember correctly, and lost in overtime.
Yeah. And
then the second loss, the Duke game, and we know how that one ended.
Another game they could have won.
Right. And I would argue, and I don't want to give away too much what we're going to do in the summer because we got some cool projects coming out in the summer episodes-wise, but that Duke game is going to be part of our summer plans, me and Murph have anyway. Jeff was probably going to
Thank you. And look, fans, we have to revisit the Duke game. We have to, and we will. And people probably hear that and roll their eyes and are feeling nauseous and stop it. We have to revisit the best UCF men's basketball game of the past, maybe ever. Well, and what we're going to do in the summer is we're going to go back in some games, UCF, and kind of look at some stories within the game that we don't think about when you're watching the game live. And when I looked at this,
I think a lot of people would have been surprised that UCF won the free throw battle, that they actually made more free throws than Duke actually attempted in that game, considering, Duke's reputation and some of the calls late in that game. But I don't want to get too much into that because we're going to save that. We're going to save that for the summer because we're going to have a lot to talk about that game because there's so many stories from that game that's remarkable. But nonetheless, my point is that's a key stat. And UCF has not been able to do that, and this is a team that has less room for error than that team did last year. So I think they have to get back to that, get back to the free throw line, and stop fouling, basically. I know it's not, common sense, but I think that's a key stat, Murph, moving forward for this team to get on track.
Yeah, it's something to watch, and it basically, what you mentioned, it boils down to a certain way of playing defense. You want to defend hard without fouling. But then also offensively, you want to try to get to the rack, attack the basket, and draw contact. And, Johnny Dawkins brought that up in his post-game radio interview. And that's just not something that we've seen enough of this team on both ends. We've seen them commit a lot of fouls down low, mostly with Colin Smith. And then offensively, sometimes the ball just stops moving, and they settle for outside shots. And although this is, a team that is not afraid to shoot a lot of threes, they've got to keep the ball moving, and then really they got to work inside out. And I always thought this team is so much better and really set up to where if you can get the ball into Colin Smith or Avery Diggs, because both guys are pretty proficient passers, and you let them work and then decide whether or not to drive, go to the hoop, or then pass it out. And then even if that doesn't work, you've got guys who can slash like Dejon Ingram and Cesar DeJesus, guys who can get to the paint. Maybe we're just not seeing enough of that. And so we'll see if that changes going forward. But, we can talk about, UCF being 0-3, and we knew it wouldn't be an easy start to the year because of their front-loaded schedule. Well, I mean, it gets even worse from here. It really does get even harder starting with Cincinnati on Saturday afternoon.
But I don't think this team's going winless like some people on social media were trying to.
No.
Like that's like one of the bigger overreactions. Like, oh my God, we're gonna go winless. Like, no, settle down. Like, I kind of feel like we always, and it kind of happens in baseball, Murph. I'll use a baseball analogy. When a baseball hitter starts the year going 2 for 20, we make it a bigger deal than it really is because every baseball player throughout the year goes 2 for 20. The difference is we notice it more when the year starts, right?
Right, because that's all we've got to go off of. Look, sports writing and sports commentary is about building narratives. So if all we have to go off is 3 data points, and that all of those data points are losses, then we'll say, is this team going to go winless? Or if a guy starts off, again hitting 100 after 20 play appearances, they go, is this guy done? Why does he suck so bad? Like, no, it's just a bad stretch. Like, if you look at their schedule, and you can just be very honest with yourself. They have Cincinnati on Saturday. That's going to be difficult, especially after what we saw Cincinnati do on Wednesday night against Tulsa, in which you saw the real Cincinnati team, the one that we all thought we were going to get going into this year, absolutely destroy Tulsa by more than 30. Then you've got a away game at Tulane, definitely winnable, even for this team. South Florida, as famously said on this podcast, not as good as expected, unfortunately for me. That could be a win. That's at home. Then you've got Wichita State, Memphis back-to-back. No. But then USF, East Carolina, Tulsa. So I know I'm going kind of far here. I'm going into February here. But the fact is that if we look up in about a month, and this team is like, I think it's like now 5. It would be 5 and 6 in conference. Like, that's very attainable. It's not awful in this conference, and people will just calm down. Like, they're going to get their wins. It would be different if we watched these games and saw a team that was completely lost, wasn't working together, got down on itself when things got bad, did not play hard defense, and we're not seeing any of that. We're seeing the absolute opposite of it. I mean, this team could absolutely cave in the first 2 minutes of that game on Wednesday night, down 13-0 after giving up a few threes, on the road for the second game in a row, back to Texas for the second time in 5 days. They didn't cave. They came back. They fought. They took the lead. Some things went wrong, but they've been competitive. This team has been, if nothing else, very feisty. And I know it doesn't matter as much as wins and losses, but at least you want to see them compete. And this team does that. And so after a while, you're gonna end up winning those games. You're gonna end up being on the right side of those games just due to the vagaries of basketball. Shots will fall while your opponent's shots bounce away. I mean, it's going to happen. So maybe they can surprise us on Saturday with a win at home against Cincinnati. I don't know. College basketball is really weird this year. There's no dominant team. Every team can be beat on any night. So I think this team at least has given itself a fighting chance every game it goes into because of the way it plays defense. And they do have shooters. I mean, they do have shooters that just haven't really, I thought, been consistently good this year. They've shot less than 30% from three-point range, but we saw it was better on Wednesday night. So maybe if they can carry a little bit of that going forward, Colin Smith is the man. They need him to be in the middle, doing a lot of scoring, a lot of passing. This team's going to be fine. This team's going to be fine. That doesn't mean the team's going to win the conference tournament or go to the NCAA tournament again, because if you ever thought that, then you were completely misguided. This is a transition year. It's a rebuilding year, and this team still can be good enough to finish in the middle of the pack of this conference. Maybe get an NIT bid if it gets a run going late in the year. And if that happens, I don't know what else you could have possibly expected more out of this team.
And we said, not to give ourselves a pat on the back, but we warned everybody this was a rough start to the schedule. Heck, I remember, Murph, when the schedule first came out, you highlighted this beginning of the schedule as a rough patch for this team. And we said 2-2, we would celebrate if they could go somehow 2-2. I would have even taken 1-3. And really the game that stings right now is the Temple game, right? If they win that Temple game, I think that we're having a completely different conversation, at least the fans' reaction is completely a little bit different. But this is a tough stretch. I mean, Houston's really good. And let me ask you real quick about SMU before we move quickly to Cincinnati. I was impressed with SMU. I know they've played a lot of home games so far this year, but they've played good basketball. This is a program that's had some sanction issues, probation issues post Larry Brown. Because people forget, this team was a championship tournament team when the American Conference was formed. They were one of the top teams in the league, and then they had probation. He's got some transfers there. We talked about some of their players there. I think SMU has a shot to be the fourth best team in this league. We'll find out if they can carry their good games on the road. I think that's the big question with SMU, but I think they're the fourth or fifth best team in the league right now.
Possibly. That spot is kind of wide open. You look at SMU, They do a couple of things really, really well. They know how to score. They're extremely efficient. They're extremely efficient on offense. I think they're one of the top 20 most efficient offenses in college basketball. And secondly, they hit their free throws. How important is that? We talk about it so much. If you make your free throws, it makes the game so much easier for you because you're not throwing away 3 points. This team does need to play better defense consistently to be in the top 4. But that spot is wide open if you consider basically that Wichita State, Memphis, and Houston, in whatever realm you want to put it in, are the top 3, and then you might have SMU and Cincinnati fighting for the 4th spot. Which can we just consider and take a step back and what I just said? Cincinnati might be the 5th best team in this conference, and they're not bad. Like they're still a tournament. They could possibly be a tournament team. That's how good this league is. Like this league is really good. Especially in the top 8 or 9, and UCF is finding that out right now. I mean, SMU I think is better this year than I expected. I would say that Wichita State is better than I expected as well. So this conference, that schedule that looks front loaded now also looks back loaded too, because there's just there's a lot of competition on here that is tough. And you know what they say when you look at a schedule and you don't find an easy victory. It possibly means that you are that easy victory. And right now, UCF has got to find its way to keep its confidence and just go forward. And know it's still early and everything they want to attain, whatever that is. I know that they talk about NCAA tournament, but let's be realistic. They could possibly finish 500 in this conference and make an NIT bid. That is a monumental accomplishment considering what Johnny Dawkins is trying to do this year. Something that he has said is maybe one of the hardest things he's ever had to do as a coach in his entire career, which is implementing 8 to 9 new players in this year's roster. And for them to possibly go 500 in this conference, I know they're 0-3 now, but believe me, the way they played and their schedule kept coming, it's possible. And if they end up doing that, then he should be applauded.
They will host Cincinnati on Saturday, noon Eastern, ladies and gentlemen. Get your coffee ready or early brunch, however you want to describe it.
Oh, baby.
Noon on ESPN2. You mentioned this earlier, Murph. They're coming off Cincinnati, maybe one of the better games they've played the whole year, blowing out Tulsa by 31 at home. They have the reigning American Conference Player of the Year, Javon Cumberland, and new first-year head coach John Brannon, who comes over from Northern Kentucky, replacing Mick Cronin, who went to UCLA. We've talked about this in previous podcasts about some of the issues they've had. It seems like chemistry-wise with the coach and the players, losing some just perplexing losses for this team and this roster, considering the expectations they have. But my concern is, real quick, could that Tulsa game be a turning point for this team? Maybe they found themselves finally, and maybe they're on the same page. Which, unfortunately for UCF, it's not the timing you would have wished that would have waited an extra week or two.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of mentioned it in the recap on the site. Is Cincinnati has been up and down. I mean, losing to Tulane, that infamous loss to Colgate at home, in which Jaron Cumberland didn't know the score and threw up a half-court shot with time remaining in a tie game. It was bonkers. And we know that Jaron Cumberland and John Brennan are not getting along well to start their relationship together. It has not gone smoothly, but I fear for UCF that maybe they've caught Cumberland and company at the wrong time because they absolutely destroyed Tulsa, and Cumberland's coming off his best game of the year. I believe he had 22 points. I want to say like 7 rebounds and 6 assists. Like, he was just all over the place, doing everything as we expect him to do. And is this the game that kind of gets them rolling into what Cincinnati should be? This has not been the defensive stalwart teams that we saw under Mick Cronin, but they're still pretty good defensively. They're not great, but they're still okay. But when you got a guy like Jaron Cumberland, who is such a mismatch at all levels of all levels of the court because of what he can do and his body and his size and just sort of how he uses his thick frame. He can just take over games, and he absolutely did that last night. And you fear that maybe now they found something where they can kind of keep it going. And you hope for UCF that's not true, and they can do something to sort of offset that. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see on Saturday at noon. I'm looking forward to it. Fans are looking forward to it as well. This team is not as bad as its record shows. If you've watched the games, you know this team has been close in every single one of the conference games. It just needs to overcome this stretch, these small stretches, 5-6 minutes really, where things go wrong, and they need to iron that out. These aren't things that aren't fixable. It's still definitely worth a team worth watching, worth following. Don't lose your minds over an 0-3 start.
22.7 boards, 8 assists. That was the box score for Jaron Cumberland in the victory over Tulsa. He's a heck of a player. UCF will have their hands full on Saturday, noon on ESPN2, and then UCF will go to Tulane, a much improved team after that, and then in host South Florida, as Murph has mentioned. We'll keep it covered. We'll have it covered for you on blackandgoldbanneret.com. Keep it there for all the latest. All right, when we come back, Murph's going to break down the big coaching title changes in UCF football, including a new guy on board. We'll tell you about that. Plus, UCF getting a Nebraska player. Yeah, take that, Nebraska. We just took one of your people. How does that feel? Who that is, Murph will tell us next. You're listening to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
And welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. I'm Eric Lopez alongside Brian Murphy. Jeff Sharon will join me next segment. We're going to talk, actually, it's a big weekend for UCF Cincinnati sports because the women's team will play at Cincinnati. Jeff and I will break that down. Plus, MLS SUPERDRAFT. I know, Murph, we're disappointed. Me and Jeff were having the MLS Super Draft party, and you're not joining us. I'm bummed out.
I know. It's weird because, everybody who looks at me just knows that soccer is my favorite sport.
I also love the fact that it's called the Super Draft. Not just a draft, it's a Super Draft.
Super Draft.
So make a note of that. All you NFL, NBA, exciting people drafts, it's not super. Anyway, we'll get into that later with Jeff on that. But in the meantime, let's get into football here, Murph, because we actually had a lot of news items football-wise. Big week this week. Obviously Jeff Lebby left for Ole Miss. People wondered who was going to replace Jeff Lebby on the staff and what role they would have and what Josh Heupel was going to do. And we have the answer now, Murph.
We sure do. And I remember when Lebby left, and the next time we saw Coach Heupel, we asked him, was there any timetable for him to replace Jeff Lebby as quarterback's coach? And he basically said at that point, no. And as it turns out, the timetable was about 3 weeks because UCF has found its new quarterback's coach, and it's gone from within. With Joey Halsley. Halsley spent last year as offensive quality control coach and is really, as I said in the article on Black Gold Banneret, he is a Heupel disciple. Has been coached by Josh Heupel when he was a quarterback at Oklahoma, then coached with Josh Heupel at Oklahoma, Utah State, and Missouri. Then comes to UCF after 2 years in the private sector, and he will be the man tasked with helping Dylan Gabriel reach every single last inch of his potential over the next 2 to 3 years of his UCF career. So your new quarterbacks coach, Joey Halsley, I think that's the key. There are three coaching changes or three titles that we'll discuss, but that is the most significant one.
I love the Heupel disciple. That's a good rhyme. I don't know if you did that on purpose or not, but I feel like we can make a T-shirt out of that.
I did, yeah. I was very fond of myself, and every once in a while I can be somewhat clever, once every 3 years. So it was really nice.
Well, the newest guy to join the staff is Alex Golesh, who comes over from Iowa State, where he was the tight ends. He was up there as one of their main guys there on the staff. I think it was their tight end coach and main recruiter guy at Iowa State. He's coming over to be the tight ends coach and the co-offensive coordinator. What can you tell us about Alex Golesh, Murph?
Well, other than obviously working with the tight ends for a long period of time, so we'll see if that changes how maybe this team utilizes guys like Jay Tescock or Jonathan McAllister. Probably not, but we'll see. I think the main thing about Golesh is his ability to recruit. He has always been one of the lead recruiters, wherever he's been. He was at Illinois, Iowa State, Toledo. He's always been – people know him for being a really, really good recruiter. And I think that's something that UCF needed to replace once Lebby left. I think Lebby did a lot of that for the offensive side of the ball, and so they've kind of found that in Alex Golesh. That's going to be, I think, the most important part of his job, even if it's not front and center on his job title of just being, quarterback's coach and co-offensive coordinator. That's great. That's fine. But his real value is going to be in the off seasons and on the road, getting guys to come to UCF. And, offensive coordinator is a fancy title, and there are two now with last year, Jeff Lebby was technically offensive coordinator, and now Golesh is sharing those responsibilities with Anthony Tucker, the running backs coach. But let's be frank, it is really in title only. And maybe that means a raise in pay, but Josh Heupel still is the chief designer of this offense. He's still calling the plays. We kind of found that out, as after Lebby left. We talked about his impact, leaving the program and how Heupel has to replace that. And let's be honest, Josh Heupel was pretty out front and making sure everyone knew just who ran the ship offensively for this team. And it's still Josh Heupel. It will continue to be Josh Heupel no matter who gets the OC titles.
Golesh officially replaces John Cooper, which I don't know if we've discussed on this podcast, but in case you've missed it, John Cooper, who was the tight end coach at UCF, left for the same role at Arkansas there. Yeah. And you mentioned the co-offensive coordinator that Golesh will be sharing. He will be sharing it with one of our own, Anthony Tucker, who's obviously the running back coach. He still will be the running back coach. Good promotion for Anthony Tucker, right? I mean, he's done a good job with the running back since he's been here. Obviously, all the talented backs there. So I think that's a good use there of a promotion. And I think a lot of times And it's funny. I don't think I don't think the majority of fans care about this kind of stuff because in reality, no one ever brings these guys up during the season, right? Like no one's going to be bringing up in October if a play goes wrong. Oh, what was Golish and Tucker doing there? People are always going to point to Josh Heupel, regardless if something goes right or something goes wrong. But nonetheless, good promotion for Tucker there, right?
Yeah, absolutely deserving. I mean, you look at, and we can talk about how a coach is only as good as the talent he's given, but a coach also has to nurture that talent and make it come out. And you can see that, with Greg McFray, a walk-on who has been really, when healthy, a stud for this team. Adrian Killen's obviously, just completely a game breaker. Ventavious Thompson has now broken through to being a guy where you can really see him being a big contributor consistently next season as more of a bigger back, short yardage, but also just if you need a workhorse type guy, he's more built for that. And obviously Otis Anderson does everything. Anthony Tucker's gotten a lot out of this running back core, and he deserves that promotion. Again, I don't think it really means his job changes much, but it's a nice title, and it probably comes with some more money. So good for him.
Right, and at the end of the day, the buck stops with Josh Heupel, and I don't have a problem with it. By the way he sets up his staff. He wants control of the offense. He's going to call the plays, as you mentioned, and I don't have a problem with that. I think Josh is a little bit of an old school thinker from the standpoint of, hey, if things are going to go well or not go well, I want it to be under my control with my hands on it. I don't want something to go wrong because somebody else did it. And it was interesting. I was watching Bill Belichick's season-ending press conference, which sounds so good to say, by the way. It feels good to say that. That it's not on a Super Bowl year and a Super Bowl presser for a change. But the Boston media asked him about being the head coach. Did he delegate enough? Did he put too much in his plate? And Belichick kind of gave a great answer that I think we kind of forget sometimes. He's like, look, as a head coach, I could do, and I'm paraphrasing what he said, I could do whatever I want. And I could delegate as much as I want, and I can have as much, involvement as I want. And that's the beauty of being a head coach. If you're a position coach, you only have control over one thing. Whereas a head coach, you have control over more things. And he feels comfortable with that because he knows what's going on. And I think Josh feels this. I bet you Josh feels the same way in that philosophy that I want to have hands-on everything that's going on, especially on the offense and the play calling. That's what I feel comfortable with. And if something goes wrong, I want it to be at least I can live with the fact that it was me that either I didn't call the right play or the play didn't go wrong. It's under my responsibility, but I can live with that. I think that's Josh's philosophy, and I don't have a problem with coaches that have that belief.
No, and as long as you are willing to answer the questions when things go wrong, because we can talk about it's great when things go right, and let's be honest, this offense goes right much more often than it goes wrong. So when things go wrong, just explain yourself. Just talk to us, explain yourself. Don't pass the buck. Know that this offense begins and ends with you. Obviously, he has input with so many with other coaches, but really, it is his ship. He has made it profoundly clear in the aftermath of Jeff Lebby. So when things go wrong next year, and I'm not saying he's never done this. I think Josh Heupel has at least been he's been around to answer questions. He doesn't scoff at the media and run off when things go bad. I mean, he is there to at least answer questions. Whether you want to quibble with the substance of his answers, that's a different thing entirely. But just when things go wrong, just talk about it. That's all. And he's done that. So, I think Heupel understands that's part of the job. And so I think he's fine with that. And I think going forward, it's just, he knows what he's made for himself. And if he's willing to be the voice and really the leader of this entire offense through and through, then just be it. And he's done that.
By the way, I know we failed to mention this, but I think this kind of tells you how much we think little of this. No, we don't think he's going to Baylor. Am I being too cocky there, Murph? I mean, just because media people put him on a list does not mean that he's necessarily leaving or he's going to be a candidate. there is this thing called the $10 million buyout that teams would have to do if they want to get Josh Heupel. And I speak of Baylor because obviously Matt Rule left Baylor to go to the Carolina Panthers, got an amazing contract. Congrats to him and his agent, by the way. Wow. Where he pretty much has say on personnel, and he's making about $7-8 million a year for like 7-year deal. No wonder he passed on the Giants. Are you concerned at all? Are you? I mean, Mississippi State is open. Again, we're recording this early Thursday morning, so I want to preference that. Any concern on your end?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard anything concrete about Josh Heupel taking an interview, or really, do we know if Baylor is absolutely invested into looking into Josh Heupel, or are we just throwing things against the wall? Because that's usually what we do in sports journalism here. I think that's right now. That's what we're at. But no, I'm not concerned. I mean, I'm not. There are definitely ways for him to get out of that $10 million buyout with Baylor. I mean, I still think they could overcome that. But I'm not like, oh, that's it, he's gone, or we should be on Heupel watch for the next 3 to 4 weeks while Baylor finds a new head coach. Like, no, just we'll see what happens. I don't expect much to happen, but we'll see. It's silly that we give this much air, but I get it. People, UCF is sort of, always wary of other programs poaching their head coaches. That's fine. But on this instance, I just don't see a whole lot right now to be alarmed about.
No. I mean, there's nothing concrete about it. So if something warrants coverage of that, we'll let you know. But I just, it was funny, like when I woke up and I saw Jeff tweet all of us, because, you knew Jeff was going to freak out. Hey, we're concerned about Heupel and Baylor. My initial thought was like, oh, okay, so Matt Rule finally took the Giants job. And then I found out, oh, wait, no, he's going to Carolina. Who knows? Odds are Baylor might just promote from within. I mean, that's more likely than what they're going to do. So who knows? But I agree with you. Look, if somebody's willing to leave Orlando to go Waco, Texas, then more power to you, man. That's my thought on that.
Yeah, that is also true.
I mean, hello, Orlando, Florida, Waco, Texas. That I think has some value. So we'll follow that story in a little bit. Let's turn our attentions to baseball, Murph, because it is that time. We're only about a month away here from college baseball, Murph. I know you're counting down the days, and we actually have UCF baseball news. A new acquisition that's going to be joining the Knights in 2020. A new face. Coming over from Nebraska. Yes,
and I will say, Eric, that UCF baseball started individual drills on Monday, the 6th, full team practices on the 24th, all leading up into the first weekend of the season, which is about 5 weeks away, middle of February. Cannot wait. But with that said, UCF did gain a transfer this week, a grad transfer from Nebraska, in Chad Lunsman. I do not know if I am exactly correct on that pronunciation. If it's Linsman or Lunsman, so forgive me. I have to check with our SID. But for what it's worth, I'll just go by Chad. I'm going to go by Chad for now, just to be safe. No disrespect. I just don't know how to pronounce that last name entirely. So let's go with Chad. I think he can be another piece out of this bullpen that can help UCF win games. We know how Greg Lovelady wants to build a strong bullpen. This is another guy who, granted, if you look at his numbers, was not good in 2019, coming off of Tommy John surgery, however, in 2018, so really needed a year to get past that. But if you look at 2016, 2017, I mean, he was a freshman All-American in 2016. Not quite as good in 2017, but still stellar. Had started a few games, but most of his work come out of the bullpen. And UCF wants to shorten games. That has been Lovelady's MO for what is now, I think, the 4th year that he's been here. Heading into his 4th season, is he wants to make this a short game and get into that bullpen by the 6th or 7th, and then shut you down. And if you look at guys that they've got, like Jeffrey Hakinson, Zach Helzel coming back as well from Tommy John, a lot of other guys, and then you add Chad to the mix. Chad, it has the makings of a really good bullpen, which we can talk a lot about this team's question marks, but maybe the bullpen is the least one of which.
Well, and that's important in baseball in general, not college, pro baseball, and things like that. Does this mean that? Does this mean we're even now for the Trey Neal going to Nebraska? Is this a fair trade? I mean, this is the player to be named later here. Can we just be all cool now? Kumbaya.
Isn't this like we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see what he does for UCF baseball. If he gets if he helps UCF baseball get in the NCAA tournament, then you have to say yes, right? Considering how
if he helps them make the tournament, I would argue we won the trade at that point. I mean,
Yeah, that's the point. That's the point because we don't know yet. I mean, obviously, Nebraska did not do a whole lot in the final season with Trey Neal, and that's not on Trey at all. There were a lot of other things wrong with that team than to put anything on Trey. But if we're talking about like 1-for-1 trades, then yeah, we'll see what happens with UCF baseball and to see how much Chad figures into that. I gotta find out his name. It's like I know it'd be like Loonsman or Linsman. It's killing me that I couldn't find a pronunciation. I should have asked the baseball SID before I did this podcast, but that's what I get for not having any foresight.
No, well, that's all right. Just call Scott Frost. Maybe he knows. Oh man, we're just having some fun with that. So that's we'll see how that goes. When is the first official practice? You said when we're going to get to see them practice?
January 24th, 2 weeks from tomorrow, 2 weeks from Friday.
Wow.
I believe those practices might be open to the public. They usually have been. And I only mention that because not that anybody really shows up to watch the practices, but I would like to. So I might be there. Because,
what do you mean, Mike? We all know you're going to be there one way or the other. It's just a matter of how you get, how you get in. Might be the question there. Should be a lot of fun baseball season around the corner. Before we let you go, and again, we'll miss you at their MLS SUPERDRAFT party that me and Jeff will be at.
Thank you.
I mentioned earlier we're doing an all-decade series on Black and Gold Banneret where we look back at the last decade, the most incredible decade for UCF athletics as a whole. And one of the pieces we've done out there is the UCF baseball all-decade team. We did 2 teams there, and we've had great feedback, by the way, for all these teams. But a lot, some people upset. But a lot of positive stuff, which I'm all for, by the way. There's no, and people have to remember, this is all subjective in a lot of ways, right? Like there is no concrete, like, oh, this guy had, this or that. It's all based on opinion and what you watched. And, we've even tweaked the teams based on fans, coming out with opinions and thoughts and feedback. That's the beauty of this, and I've been overwhelmed actually by how many players have come to me, Murph, and appreciated the recognition, if you will. And I've been also overwhelmed and pleased with players that are generally like, man, what about Thad Ward was like, what about me? And he was right. I made the mistake on that. I forgot Thad Ward. I mean, Jeff had these stats, Baseball Cube, which I had no idea about. I wish I would have known that before I put in my votes on that. What's your overall thoughts? You've seen the list. Give me your overall impression on the all-baseball decade there, since I know you missed a good chunk of it because you were on sabbatical in California, but yet, you have a good perspective for the program.
Famously on sabbatical, yes, according to some. Look, I think there's 2 things that we should get out of the way out front. Like I said, it's totally subjective. This is not ordained by the university. This is not official in any way. This is us trying to create content after football season in which not a whole lot's going on. And I commend you, Eric Lopez, because baseball, I think, above all else, is really difficult just because there's so many different guys, even more so than football. There's so many different guys doing different jobs on the field. And to sort of go through each one over a decade long of baseball and break it down by position, I think what you came up with was a pretty good list. Not that I disagree with all of the feedback that you've gotten. I do think the fans have brought up good points about adding guys to the list, and we've done that. We have not been stuck in stone with the list. I think it's absolutely fine. I remember when you shot the initial list over to me, because I'm supposed to be the baseball guy and yada yada yada. And I look at it, I'm like, that looks totally fine to me. Like I now you could say like I didn't have the foresight to add in guys like Thad Ward, which we should have added out of hand initially. I get that, but we've corrected that mistake. But still, I think it's a really good representation of what UCF baseball has given us through the decade. And it's fun as a fan to not only look back, and obviously I'm very familiar with guys who have been here for the past 3 years, but for me, for guys who were here early on in the decade, 2011, 2012, 2013, when honestly, I swear to God, there's some guys on this list who I was not aware of, because at that point in my life, living 3,000 miles away, I just wasn't paying attention to UCF baseball. And I think you've done a really good job of giving everyone a great snapshot of the decade, very evenly thought out, or laid out as far as representation over each era, both with Rooney and Lovelady. And yet, people can quibble all they want and disagree about omissions and whatever, but we're always going to have that. We're always going to have things like this. There's always going to be guys who don't make the cut. This is what we do. We talk about people who got left out, what they got left out, and you know, at least we are not, you know, so stuck up to think that we can't change it. At least we've done that.
No,
but overall, it's been very nice.
No, and that's why we want fans' feedback. I mean, this is important, and it's important to a lot of people. Like I said, it's really, a lot of players have, messaged me, Murph, and said thank you, and things like that, and like Roman Madrid, and things like that. And that means a lot, because remember, these guys don't get the coverage that, for example, football does, or even basketball. So this is, for them, it's a really big, it's good to be mentioned. Now let me defend a few picks real quick, because some people have questioned certain selections, and I want to defend some of them. For example, some people have a problem with Chris Duffy being on the list because he only played in 2010. People, do you realize that was his year that he ended up a Golden Spikes finalist? Hello? Huh? I think that
arguably had the best season in UCF baseball history.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of 2 UCF players ever to end up a Golden Spikes finalist, which is the award that goes to the best baseball player in the country. And I believe he lost to Bryce Harper. Is that right, Murph? That year?
He did lose to Bryce Harper, and famously was also up against Chris Sale and Drew Pomeranz and another major leaguer whose name I'm forgetting. Oh, Yasmani Grandal.
Yeah.
Like, literally, we mentioned this a few weeks ago, but it never fails to amaze me. The top 5 Golden Spikes finalists for 2010 were Chris Duffy and 4 guys who, to this day, are still playing in the major leagues. And 2 of them are legitimate stars, and Grandal just got like a $60 million contract.
That's good. That's a good list. And then Shane Brown, who some people like, he had an All-American year in 2010. He had like 330. I mean, he was a machine. I mean, honestly, with the Hall of Fame, they announced this week they're taking suggestions for the 2020 UCF Hall of Fame class. I think Duffy and Shane Brown are 2 candidates for baseball right off the bat. They were 2 of the best baseball players ever. So they warrant to be in the first team there. Some people question Roman Madrid. I told you this off air, Murph. Roman Madrid in 2012, he was there for 1 year, but he was the bridge to Joe Rogers and what I thought. And you mentioned earlier how important the bullpen is for Lovelady in this year. That was a key big factor in 2012 why UCF arguably had their best team ever. They had a dominant bullpen with Madrid and Rogers. I compared it to the Yankees in 96 to you off air about Wetland and Rivera. Probably a more accurate statement would even be more recent, since we have a Nebraska tie-in here. Jabba Chamberlain. Remember Jabba when he was in his prime as a setup guy to Rivera?
How can I forget?
Before all the mosquitoes got in the way and you guys decided.
The midges.
Right.
No, the midges. They ruined them all.
Well, that was Roman Madrid. He was Jabba Chamberlain. A big factor in that bullpen. They don't have the success without him. He was dominant as a setup guy, and he could close when Rogers wasn't available. He more than warranted being on the first team. That's why I had him in the first team for some people that were questioning that deal there. And again, JJ Montgomery, you saw him for that 1 year. He was dominant, especially in that second half of the year in 2018. That's why he was on the second team.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Like I think JJ was sort of finding his way that year, sort of finding his role, and they didn't really have a role early on. Started out, I think, as a starter, moved to the bullpen, and they found a way for him to be really, really effective, and ultimately, to get himself a pro gig as a draftee the following year. So, no, I agree. Again, we could talk about, and we could also talk about, and not that we should, but I'm saying, fans' perspective of how much weight do you put into one great year over 3 to 4 years of like just being good? Like what one weighs more, right? And I think that might be that, like you mentioned with guys like Duffy and Shane Brown, like that people don't understand why they're there. Well, I mean, we are giving, I think, extra weight to to singular years that really stand out, as opposed to maybe you're here for 4 years and you had some moments, but there's nothing that really made you memorable.
Well, and baseball is hard, too, because, as you know, guys sometimes just play for a year or two and then get into the MLB draft, and you're gone. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to play a 3 or 4 year career. Another guy we have, in fact, the only active player on this decade team that I put in was Joe Sheridan. And the reason I put him in, Murph, because he was 10 wins in that 2017 year. He was a beast. And if he can come back healthy, it's a nice little parallel. If he can come back healthy this year and be somewhere close to what he was in 2017, for example, that's a huge, big arm to have back. As he helped them win the American Conference title in 2017. He's had great numbers, 128 innings pitched in his career, 1.14 whip, and things like that. You know, he's one of those guys, and I've heard from people that this is the best he's felt, post-injury. So if he can get back to close to what he was as a dominant, weekend guy, that's huge.
It's absolutely gigantic. And we'll delve into it more deeply later this month and then the next month about the question marks that are surrounding this team's starting pitching staff. And a lot of that has to do with health. And it kind of does start with Sheridan, because you go back to the 2017 season, which the year that got him on this list, as a freshman, their best pitcher, bar none, their best starting pitcher. I know he wasn't their ace that year because Robbie Howell was their ace, but I mean, if you wanted a guy to win a game, you wanted a freshman on the mound, a true freshman, and Joe Sheridan. He was absolutely phenomenal. Obviously, last year, or I should say, it was 2018. Struggled with command, and maybe that was due to the oncoming impact of the injury, but kind of lost his command and then sat out all of last season rehabbing. But if he comes back, it's a huge shot in the arm for this team.
Yeah, it should be fun. So check out our list, our all-decade baseball teams on blackandgoldbanneret.com. And Murph, I feel like this was good for you, right? That was some baseball segment right there, huh? Get them closer.
That's all I need. I just need a small fix. How about this, Jeff? I just called you Jeff. I called you Jeff for this one reason. We're going to talk about Jeff. We're going to talk about Jeff a little bit behind his back now, because I have to ask you, Eric. This is more like an on-air / off-air meeting. When's the basketball team coming out online? We talked about this for 2 weeks now. We teased the all-decade basketball team for 2 weeks. What's going on there?
Murph, that might be your best segue of your career since you've joined the podcast. Because coming up next, Jeff Sharon will join us, and I'll ask him that question live on the air. We also might recap the MLS SUPERDRAFT. Cal Jennings, men's UCF men's soccer star. Did he get drafted? Where did he go? Plus, women's basketball at Cincinnati as they start a big stretch in women's basketball. Murph, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Eric. We'll see you later.
Coming up next is Jeff Sharon. We'll talk all about what I just said. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. And welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. And as I promised, now joining me after this big MLS SUPERDRAFT party that we had that Murph didn't want to come to, and fresh off him now, relieved. I think he's a little more relaxed now because the Mississippi State head coaching job is now no longer vacant, as, of course, Mike Leach is the new head coach at Mississippi State, so that's one less job Josh Heupel could, in theory, leave for, and that's, of course, Jeff Sharon. Are you feeling better now? Are you feeling better? I mean, that was a fun SUPERDRAFT to party that you threw out, by the way.
All right.
Murph missed out.
Well, first of all, yes, it's unfortunate that Murph missed out. I mean, what was he going to do? Go, hang out, on the outside of John Giuliano Park watching UCF's baseball practice? I mean, come on. Second of all, we got some breaking news to report, Eric.
Yes, we
do. With the 17th, well, actually, no. Let's hand it to the folks from ESPN, and the pick is in. The pick is in. Let's listen in.
At number 17, Cal Jennings. You called it, Matt. Best player left on the board.
Yeah, and this is what he does. He puts the ball in the back of the net. He did it consistently for a pretty good program in a pretty good league. He doesn't wow you in any aspect of the game. I think the one I would compare him to the most is Brian White from the Red Bulls. And Brian White makes his living by being in the right place at the right time, being fundamentally sound. and scoring goals.
That's a lot of goals in college football, Taylor. 18, 4 assists, Herman Trophy semi-finalist.
Yeah, because you got to remember, it's 18 goals in how many games?
Yeah.
23 games in a sprint in like 2.5 months, right? So it is a lot of goals. Obviously, the next step, no matter what kind of goal scorer you are, that's always a difficult one, and how quickly you can adapt to that. But again, this is FC Dallas. They have a huge success track record of doing it the right way and giving those young players an opportunity. If you're Cal Jennings and his family, you got to be extremely pleased.
So there's Cal Jennings, UCF star Cal Jennings. He's in MLS now. He was drafted by FC Dallas, number 17 overall. He was, and by the way, some familiar names have gone ahead of him, but he's going to. Excuse me. 17 overall. So he's the second actual Dallas player to be picked. They also had the 14th pick, but. Yet another American Athletic Conference player being taken. Of course, Garrett McLaughlin from SMU is staying in his home state of Texas to play for the Houston Dynamo.
Not bad.
Which is
Houston and Dallas.
Yes.
Jennings and McLaughlin, that rivalry will continue in the state of Texas.
By the way, because I can't pass up the opportunity to do this.
Just let it out.
Complete fail by Orlando City. Complete fail. They had the number 5 overall pick. Now, they went for Daryl DK, the freshman out of the University of Virginia. Nothing against Daryl DK. I watched him in the College Cup tournament. He's an outstanding player. He's literally built like he should be a running back, I think, for UVA, or a linebacker probably. An amazingly talented player, and he'll be fun to watch for Orlando City. But Cal Jennings is sitting there, okay? Your hometown boy, all right? McLaughlin stays in Texas. What else do we have? We have a guy from the Big East goes to the Red Bulls. We have Ryan Raposo, who is a Canadian, goes to the Vancouver Whitecaps, even though he played at Syracuse. Inter Miami got a guy from the ACC who they watch, Robbie Robinson, with the number 1 overall pick. Orlando City, you could have done it, and you just keep stiff-arming your fans like this, not drafting Cal Jennings. It is absurd what that franchise is doing. Absolutely patently absurd. It is so upsetting. Nonetheless, we are now FC Dallas fans here at the Black and Gold Banneret, and so Cal will be going to Toyota Stadium in Frisco to play for FC Dallas, assuming there's no trades, and you never know with drafts and stuff. But he's going to be he's going to play for FC Dallas. So 17th overall pick, not too bad.
No, not at all. Some mock drafts had him going top 12. But I listened to Taylor Twellman. I watched the coverage, which was fascinating, Jeffrey. My favorite part is Nashville. They're making the pick, going to the person they drafted second overall to their house, literally to their house, to announce the pick. Take note, NBA, NFL fans, all right? Go to the person's house to make the pick. That's pretty wild. But Twellman, I think,
it's like Publishers Clearinghouse. They knock on the door, like, "Hey, congratulations!"
It literally was. It was unbelievable. But Twellman made the point there, and I forget the other person that was part of the coverage. You might have even mentioned it in the audio there. FC Dallas does a great job of developing players. So actually, by dropping to FC Dallas at 17, might actually benefit Cal long term because he's in a good organization that's won, that knows how to develop players, as opposed to going early in the draft to go to a team that maybe doesn't know what it's doing or knows how to develop players or build a team. Taylor was very critical. You were just critical. Taylor was just as critical about Orlando City as well in the direction of that franchise. So what
direction?
Well, that's true. So I actually think it might work out for him long term to go to FC Dallas and be developed there. And I'm just happy for him. Best player I've ever seen in person. What a legacy he's left. And what a legacy, Jeffrey, the UCF men's soccer program continues to have with the MLS, because believe it or not, he's not the first UCF player to get drafted, even in the first round. This just continues a trend, and I'll read it. And credit to Ken Landis, Kenny, or the SID at UCF men's soccer, as well as men's and women's tennis, who wrote this story about how the MLS players are doing. You got players like Romario Williams, who's actually went 3rd overall in the 2015 draft, going to Montreal. Deshaun Brown was drafted by the Rapids 6th overall in the 2012 MLS Super Draft. I got to call it Super Draft. Remember, it's a Super Draft, not a regular draft. Orlando City did take Haji Berry, 13th overall in the 2016 draft.
One of the few things that they've done right in the last few years.
Then you got Kevin George, 2nd round at Columbus, 29th overall. Warren Caravel, who's with the Houston Dynamo, by the way, was drafted 2nd round. He's still having a good career in the MLS. And, of course, John Johnson, maybe the most famous UCF soccer player. In fact, he's trying out right now. He's trying to make the U.S. national team.
Yeah, he's been in the U.S. national team system for a few years now. Hopefully he'll get a shot at the next World Cup, too.
Absolutely. Romario is still playing with Columbus Crew. Cravell has probably been the most successful professional player as far as in the MLS, not counting Sean Johnson. He's playing with Philadelphia now. Sean has been playing with New York City FC. But the point is, in all this, there's nice success here, rich success quietly for UCF in the MLS.
Yeah, and by the way, there was one more that Kenny mentioned in his article. Ryan Rochendale, who I watched play when I was working at UCF, he's retired from professional soccer, but he's now a member of the coaching staff for San Antonio FC as well. So now you're starting to get some UCF guys involved in the coaching ranks, which is pretty awesome. We're so happy for Cal. He's, by the way, quality dude. Dallas is getting next, and we're still watching to see who else might go. I believe we have one other UCF player.
Dean's eligible now. The way they do
Dean,
the draft
right.
is interesting. The first 2 rounds were Thursday. And then the 3rd and 4th round is next week.
Interesting.
I don't know why they decided to. It's because it's not a regular draft; it's a super draft.
Super draft.
That's correct. That's what we've learned there. And by the way, and for those that don't follow it closely, the MLS, I would compare it to Major League Baseball in that more than likely Cal will start out in the lower levels, probably in the USL, where Haji Berry's actually spent some time there. Deshaun Brown, I think, has been playing over down there in the USL with Energy FC as well as Kevin George to some extent. So we won't see him, I don't think, right away in the big leagues in the MLS. It'll take some time to develop, kind of like Major League Baseball with minor league players. But man, I'll be following him closely and hoping for the best there. How about, by the way, he'll have a fellow UCF guy in the region there with Chad Brown, who's actually in the G League over there in that Dallas area.
Right, in the Dallas. By the way, stop by UCF men's basketball when they were practicing over in Fort Worth when they were getting ready to play SMU. By the way, the USL 1 team that is affiliated with FC Dallas is called North Texas SC. They play. Where do they play? They play. They play in Frisco as well. Let's see. There's they actually play their games at reportedly Globe Life Park in Arlington, which is the now former home of the Texas Rangers, and so they're kind of converting that park into like a multi-use park where they'll play baseball, soccer, and then also I think the XFL Dallas team is going to be playing their games there too. So pretty interesting that they get to actually play in that facility. But that's not FC Dallas. But Cal will likely be playing for North Texas SC to start out at Globe Life Park, and then we'll just keep an eye on him as FC Dallas progresses, and hopefully they bring him up sooner rather than later. So that should again, another UCF player going. Hopefully we'll see another. All right, so that's it for our breaking news on the MLS Super Draft.
Draft pick, baby. Draft picks.
All right,
love it.
By the way, a welcome alternative from like the basketball and like this off-season football madness. Where do you feel? Me and Murph discussed this earlier. How are you feeling now, a few days removed? Because I mentioned the fact that you texted us all once Matt Rule went to Carolina, which you inadvertently broke the news to me. Because when I saw your text, I'm like, oh wow, Matt Rule took the Giants job, and then I realized, oh no, he didn't. He went to the Carolina. Okay. Are you worried?
I asked Murph this question. How worried are you, one scale there, as far as Heupel to Baylor? Me and Murph not too worried. We think this is all media driven. We're not taking it too seriously.
Okay. So yesterday, I hopped on the Beat of Sports with Mike Tuck. Mike was filling in for Mark Daniels, and he had me on the show, and he asked me the same question, and I said, on a scale of 10, I'm at about a 6. So I'm not, ringing the alarm bells just yet. I'm not. I have no notifications set for any flights from Orlando to Waco.
Nor should anyone, quite frankly.
Nor should I get it. But
I've met so many people that have gone to Waco. Not one person has ever told me, "Man, I had a really good time there."
You never met Chip and Joanna Gaines, apparently. But anyway, so here's my. Here's the one thing, Eric, that worries me, and I apologize if we're going back over things that you and Murph talked about earlier when I couldn't make it. But the AD at Baylor was at Mizzou when Heupel was there, so that's what kind of gets me a little bit worried. Now, what makes it a 6 instead of an 8 is. He just made all these staff moves. Why would he, hire all these new people just to bolt out the door 2 days later? You know what I mean? So, Oh, and we have breaking news. Breaking news, by the way. More soccer. Well, Orlando City sort of redeemed themselves. With the number 13 pick in the second round, they have drafted UCF defender Jonathan Dean.
Wow!
So Orlando City has.
Do you have to apologize? Do you have to apologize?
No, they could have had both UCF guys. I'm not apologizing for that. Although I'm glad, like I said, I'm glad they got the Virginia kid. But they have somewhat redeemed themselves in getting at least one UCF player in the MLS draft, Super Draft, in Jonathan Dean with that 13th pick in the second round. So.
Awesome.
Congrats! Hey, two UCF players going in the first 2 rounds.
Pretty good and pretty good ones. Dean, defense players in the back line always don't get a lot of shine when it comes to soccer because they don't put up stats. Obviously, that's not their job. But Dean was.
But they're probably the most important guys on the field, though, man. I'll tell you that. And Dean was.
Absolutely, no doubt. I agree.
Dean was a big part of that team this year.
I agree, and I'm happy for him. I couldn't tell. It was hard to read where he would go in the draft. I knew he was eligible, but to go second round, hey, go to Orlando City. In fact, that could become my front runner now if he gets called up to be my first ever Orlando City jersey pickup. That could be it right there, right there, my friend. So that's a good move. Happy for him. Second round. That's a pretty good deal and a good day for the UCF program. I'm trying to look. I'm actually going to look. Is that the first time we've had 2 players in the same draft? 2 players drafted in the same draft? Actually, the answer is no. It was 2011. We had Kevin George and Warren Cravell in the same draft.
Right. That's why I thought. Yeah, I thought there was 1 year before, and that was the year. Those guys played under Brian Cunningham, and so obviously, and they're still in the systems out there. So that's obviously good. But yeah, this is the second time that's happened, and first time in 9 years. So Cal Jennings again to FC Dallas, and Jonathan Dean to Orlando City. So again, congrats to those 2 guys. All right, so back to the Heupel thing. Yeah. Anyway, just to wrap that up. Like I said, I don't think he would have hired all those guys to be on a staff here in Orlando if he had designs on going elsewhere. And and obviously, it's not like news of the Baylor job opening is new in the coaching area. I mean, it's more than likely that if Rule was interested in going in leaving Baylor for the NFL, obviously that's news that would have been traveling around the coaching ranks among the agents and stuff for a while. And if Josh Heupel was interested, I don't think he would have done all that to what he did in order to leave. But again, I'll feel a lot better once Baylor announces their head coach and it's not Josh Heupel. That's the thing.
The one thing I will say, if you're Josh Heupel, if you're going to leave UCF, I don't think you leave for a Baylor job. I don't think Baylor is a job that's like a destination job. I mean, you saw. I mean,
you don't think so? Really? The Big 12 private school. You had a lot of money.
Yeah, it's Waco, Texas. I mean, nobody wants to go to Waco, Texas unless they have.
Okay, but nobody. I mean, you could say that about 75% of the college towns in the country, but
yeah, but
so
I mean,
what?
I've never heard as much disdain as I've heard from Waco, Texas, and I don't know. I've never been there, so I can't speak. I just know no one's ever spoken positively of Waco. I think to me,
I think you're underselling Waco as a city, but anyway.
Wow, I didn't know you were the tourist. Okay, that's good. But here's the thing: if you're Josh, you've got a loaded team coming back next year. You're going to be probably the favorites, if not co-favorites, to win the American. You've got a chance to win 10-plus games, okay? You could probably get a better job if you get another year, have another big year at UCF, right? If you win a conference title next year or so, I think you'll get better jobs than Baylor available to you. Now, no one knows, and let's be honest, Josh is a family guy. Orlando's a good family city, and he has no ties to the school. I know some people are listening. What if Scott Frost went to Lincoln, Nebraska? Well, he went to school there. He's from there. There's ties there. I would be surprised. I would be surprised if he moved. But hey, if you want to go to Waco, God bless you. But I think if he waits another year or two, Jeff, there are more prime jobs that he can get if he wants to. And for all we know, he could want to stay here as well, by the way.
Yeah, that's true. And by the way, Josh Heupel, if you're wondering, where is he from? Aberdeen, South Dakota. So it's not like he's a Texas kid, I mean,
maybe we'll get the
Scott Frost was. Let's put it this way: if Josh Heupel one day ends up the head coach of the South Dakota State Jackrabbits, we've had a couple things go wrong. But but like you said, Scott Frost was, he was a Nebraska kid, right? So yeah, I mean that's
and really, I mean, when Scott got here, I always felt that he was going to leave for Nebraska. It was just a question of when would the Nebraska job open, and unfortunately, or on your perspective, that job probably opened sooner than we all thought. I think we thought maybe Nebraska's job would open a year later than it did. I don't get that sense being around Josh. I could be wrong. Again, I mean, heck,
he's pretty good at. Well, I will say this: he's pretty good at keeping his cards close to his vest.
I agree. So we'll see what happens, but let's not get caught up because some media writer in CBSSports.com puts him on the headliner.
He's always going to be. It's always one of those things where it's like, okay, he's out. Let's throw some names around. Heupel's got Big 12 ties. Oklahoma, but he'll never go back to Oklahoma because they fired him. But maybe he'll go to Baylor, revenge play. And then look at that, the AD, and it's. I mean, on the outside it makes sense, but on the inside, well, I mean, it might make sense, but I don't know. I still don't think it's going to happen as of Thursday afternoon. If we could be doing an emergency podcast on Friday for all we know. But all right, so that hopefully puts to bed the Heupel thing. All right, let's talk women's hoops before we go here. So they're in the midst of conference play now, having just taken it to ECU, and I was at that game. I don't know what it is about this team, man. They play some weird games, but UCF beats ECU 91-55 in Orlando. I'm trying to find the largest lead. But I can't find it here in the box. But anyway, this game was not a contest from the very beginning. UCF dropped 28 points in the first quarter to 9 for ECU, and they were up 52-15 at the half. 52-15 at the half, and ECU kind of fought back a little bit. Actually outscored UCF by 1 point in the second half, but by then it was pretty much like garbage time. And one thing I think that Coach Abe is probably not very happy with is how sloppy UCF was late in the game. In particular, UCF committed 29 turnovers in this game. 5 players turned the ball over 4 times or more. KK Wright turned it over 6 times. Now, they did force 23 turnovers by ECU, but ECU's playing with 8 people. And they're in a first-year coach, big-time rebuilding year. It's that program's in some straits right now. They're trying to figure it out. But UCF held ECU to 7 of 27 from the field in the first half, while the Knights themselves shot 17 out of 30 in that first half. We saw quite a bit of three-point shooting, 8 threes in the first half. How about a couple players that I wanted to highlight here? First of all, Georgia Gale had her best shooting day of the year, 6 of 7 from three-point range, 18 points. But she wasn't the leading scorer. That goes to Brittany Smith, who is just balling out right now. I mean, she's had the hot hand, double figures, I think, in 5 straight games. This is one of the best games I've seen her play. Get a load of this line, Eric. 8 of 10 from the field, 5 of 5 at the line, 21 points, 5 rebounds, 1 foul. She was excellent in this game. KK Wright had 8 points and 8 assists on just 2 of 7. KK kind of didn't look like herself in this game. I think she's kind of in third gear a little bit. I don't know. It felt like, this. Look, I'm out here to run the offense, but I don't need to shoulder the scoring load for this game. Masni Kaba had 7 rebounds. UCF, by the way, out-rebounded ECU 46 to 18. That was the difference in the game. But a little sloppy in the second half, Eric. I don't think it's really cause for concern because there was a lot of garbage time involved. Destiny Thomas got a lot of minutes, and she rarely plays. Kind of the big of the future to go with Brittany Smith once Masni Kaba graduates. Destiny had played 15 minutes in the game. We saw Anna Burney check in. We saw Caroline Daniels. I'm not too concerned about it, but it's one of those things like you really could have stepped on their throats there and not. And
it's hard to do that though. It's hard to keep that up.
That's fair.
The thing that jumps out at me at this team, and it remains to be seen. Obviously, we're just starting conference play and how the season plays out and how this team does. But if I feel like this team has more upside offensively than any team that Coach Abe's had here. And I think this is a better offensive team than last year because, the last few years, Jeff, every time we talked about it, it was either last year was KK or bust. The year before that was Z Saunders or bust, right? I don't get that sense this year. KK is still the most important player, obviously. But you just mentioned there's some shooters on this team. There's players that could score. I think they got multiple scorers for the first time on this team. I think under Coach A, maybe since her first year, maybe. You had Gregory there. I'm trying to remember if you had 2.
Well, you had Zy Lewis also.
Lewis, yeah. Right. That might have been the closest. But,
and freshman KK, who was, freshman KK. She was just as reckless as she is now, except she wasn't quite there yet. So, but yeah, and to be honest with you, Aaliyah Gregory, good as she wasn't quite Aaliyah Gregory yet that year either. That was when we sort of discovered Aaliyah Gregory. I think I'm really encouraged by the bigs, and Masni Kaba is so solid down low, especially as a rebounder. She's also turned herself into a really great rim protector. 4 blocks in this game. I just love the fact that you got Moss and Brittany Smith starting.
Brittany Smith has been balling.
She's
15 points, 6 boards, 65% from the field her last 5 games. Really, that's what I'm talking about, Jeff. They've got different options of where they can get scoring from outside and inside.
Right.
I think it's a versatile offense. That's the thing that gets me excited about this team moving forward. And I think their defense has caught up to their standards, where I think early in the year they were learning how to play together. They struggled defensively. I think offensively this team's pretty talented and really impressive, to the point, Jeff, where I don't know if you agree with this, I did like my tiers for women's basketball with the league play starting. Obviously, UConn's tier 1, number 1, big shot. I've got UCF as their only tier 2 team right now. I don't know. I got USF and Cincinnati, who UCF will play on Sunday, in the tier 3 group with Temple. then there's a drop-off. The problem with the league, you got teams like Houston, Wichita State, Tulane in the 140s RPI. Memphis is 180, SMU 191. That's a big problem. UCF's currently a 55 RPI in this team. So they got to have to play a clean sheet outside of UConn. But the thing that I'm optimistic about is I think this team now can beat you multiple ways. It's not just we're going to win with defense and try to win a low-scoring game and slug it out. I think they can win with offensive as well. They have different ways to beat you, I think, this team.
Yeah. Only 3 teams from the American, by the way, in the RPI top 100 right now. Temple is the other one behind UCF. And then number 4 is South Florida, but we don't know what we're really going to get from them this year. Temple, by the way, is 57th. UCF is 55th, like you said. I do think, obviously, there's still. I agree with you. I think there is a bit of a larger gap between UCF and Temple, although I haven't really watched much of Temple this year. They seem to be up there because of a number of non-conference. They're at 9-6. So it could be a function of their schedule. I don't know. I have to take a look at it.
They played a tough schedule. They played South Carolina. They played UConn already because they had to play an early conference.
Right.
UConn.
So that bumped them up.
Yeah. But we'll see how good they are or not as time would tell. Let's talk about Cincinnati, though, because Cincinnati, I think, by all purposes, was picked 3rd or 4th in this league. They were the 3rd best team last year. UCF beat them in the semifinals of the American Conference, beat them in a dramatic game in Orlando in last year where KK stole the ball to win by a point. Cincinnati is coming off a win at Memphis, tight game. Their RPI is only at 144, and this is the flaw with the RPI that I have an issue with. This is a tough game for UCF going on the road to Cincinnati on Sunday, but yet, according to the numbers, it's not supposedly a tough game, and that's where teams get hurt with the RPI because UCF could lose this game and get hurt RPI-wise, and if they win, they won't get maybe the credit that they probably should get.
Yeah, they have a first-year head coach in John Brannon.
Well, that's the men's team.
Is that? Wait a minute.
John is the men's.
I'm sorry. Yeah, my bad. Yeah, that's right.
She's in her second year. Who you're talking about? There's a lot of new faces at Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Big week. By the way, of Cincinnati sports in basketball this weekend.
But it shows that I am just locked in on football. Now, Michelle Clark-Hurd, by the way, is the Cincinnati coach in her second year there. But yeah, I don't. I saw a lot of things. Thinking back to last year with Cincinnati, I saw a lot of things. One of the things you want to look for is like when you're under first-year coach, and you talked about that game that UCF and Cincy played at UCF last year that went down to the wire. There's always going to be a lot of roster turnover, but you're always going to. But how do those players who are assembled come together? And sure, they might lose a lot of games, but are they going to make you earn it? And Cincinnati made everybody earn it last year. And that's what kind of frightens me of them a little bit about this year. So yeah, you're right. You're playing this game on the road. It's your first road game in conference. At least you got a week in between this game. And the other thing, I don't think this will happen, but you never know with college kids, is 4 days later you got UConn at home. And are they looking? Could they look past Cincinnati a little bit? I hope not. I don't think they will. By the way, everyone's like, "Oh, blame it." When that does happen. Sometimes it does happen, right? Everyone blames the coaches. You can't blame the coaches. The coaches are sitting there. It's not like the coaches are like, "Don't worry about Cincinnati. We're playing UConn in a few days. We'll beat Cincinnati." No, the coaches are keenly aware of that factor, and it's like Josh Heupel says, right? Go 1-0. Just focus on the game that's right in front of you. Nothing else matters. Coach Abe is the same way, although she doesn't use that cliche that everyone hates, but I actually like. But anyway, it's the players who could tune that out. And I don't think they will. I don't think KK will let them as the senior leader of the team. But you never know. They're gonna get Cincinnati's best shot because Cincinnati knows that that this can really help them out in the league standings. Getting a W over UCF, particularly at home. And I think, is this the only time we do play them at home on the day after Valentine's Day. So
right, this is the tough stretch. You could argue the toughest of the schedule, but they have to go through this twice. They're at Cincinnati.
Yeah, Cincinnati, UConn, USF.
Yeah, and they have to do this again later in the year not necessarily in that order, but when they go to UConn, host USF and Cincinnati. So we're going to learn a lot about this team, I think, after this upcoming week with Cincinnati, UConn, and USF in a matter of 7 days. It's just incredible. So we're going to learn a lot about this team. But I got to give you credit. I remember we talked about them, it was like a month ago maybe, when they were around 500, and you set out the goal to get to 10-4 going into the UConn game.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that? You said 10-4. If they win this game at Cincinnati, they reach that goal, 10-4, and a 2-0 start in the league if they could do it, in Cincinnati. And so it's a credit to them for playing very well. But this could be a tough one. And by the way, nationally televised. It'll be on ESPN2 Sunday, 2 o'clock. It's an hour before the Chiefs and the Texans. So all you could still pop in there little women's hoops before the NFL starts.
Hopefully UCF will have the game in hand by then, so we don't have to.
Wow.
So we don't have to stay. Hopefully, I'm not saying it would happen, but hopefully.
By the way, we're going to get into this more probably the night before next episode. UConn final trip to Orlando. That's a big deal.
Oh boy, all the folks from the villages are coming down to UCF to watch that game. Boy, let me tell you.
Wow, see what happens when Jeff's not hosting?
I'm not joking, dude. I mean, have you been there? Have you been there for that game the last few years?
I was there a couple years ago, yes.
It's like 75% of Lake County drives down for this game. I swear half the villages went to UConn. And they're there and they are there to watch that game. It's
the national program. It's a big program. I mean, and we're going to get into that more. We'll get into that more.
More UConn fans came to watch the women's basketball team at the arena than came to watch the football team when they play here. And I'm not exaggerating.
I would rather see the women's basketball team than their football program, too. I think that's pretty fair. So we're going to go more in depth on that big matchup in our next episode. We're going to go into that. But remember, UCF Cincinnati on the Deuce, Sunday, 2 o'clock. Men's, by the way, Saturdays, we talked with Murph earlier. That's a noon tip on ESPN2. So we're both the men and the women's game against Cincinnati on the Deuce. The men on Saturday at noon Eastern at UCF. And then the women on Sunday, 2 o'clock on the Deuce. Got all that? I know it's a little tricky, but
write it down.
I think we got all that written down. All right, so as we wrap up here, I have to address this because Murph closed by calling you out on the show publicly, airing dirty laundry, Banneret laundry here. He wants to know, when is the rest of the All-Decade series that we've been promoting will come out? He's very eager. He was trying to press me about who I put on my softball All-Decade team. I did not budge. He called you out. He called you out, Jeffrey. He called you out. So this is your opportunity to respond to Murph, because I know you promoted this when you were on with Mike and on the Beat of Sports as well about our All-Decade series.
Yes. All right. So I wanted to get a few more of them out the last couple days, but then the news happened. And I don't want to crimp on the news cycle, so we're gonna have one more coming out. And by the way, we have a guest writer actually with a new post. Andrew Gluchov, do you know him from? He's Statboy Drew on Twitter. He wrote us a guest post that he wanted to get up on the site, so that'll be coming out. And then the rest of this week, we should be having some of these all-decade teams coming out. It was gonna happen. We had but then we had all the football news break. And like I said, I didn't want them to get lost in the shuffle because there's still plenty of time. There's still plenty of time out there. So let's make sure that. So I want to make sure it gets as much audience as they can. And that's why I'm holding off on them. But we got. Let's see. We got football came out, baseball came out, volleyball came out. We're gonna do softball. You sent me the soccer ones.
We got men's and women's soccer. Which is really those are a lot of fun. I actually really like those. And then what else? We have the basketball team.
And the basketball team's coming out. I think I'm going to do the basketball ones early next week because there's going to be a lot there. And then in addition to that, what else do we have? Do we have
all coaches decade?
Yep, top 10 coaches of the decade. The coaches of the decade. We have the games of the decade.
And even top opposing players, like best players UCF played in sport. In a
That's
lot
right.
Of different sports. Pretty cool names. pretty cool name. So it's a good series. Murph, calm down, Murph. See, Murph, I don't know if that helps.
Don't you worry one bit, Murph. Save your fear for when you and I are worried about, when you and I are worried about, is Joe Judge the answer for the New York Giants?
Maybe that's why he's not really joining us. Maybe.
Anyway, so that's what we're, that's, by the way, I like the hire. But anyway, that's all. That's what I've made my piece on Twitter with that. All my fellow UCF Giants people, you can read that there. But anyway, that's where we're at. So I'm feeling pretty good about this.
So we got all that coming out on Black and Gold Banneret. Obviously, Murph's recap of the SMU game is on right now. And then later in the week, maybe even Monday, my article about will UCF football finish the year in the top 25. I actually broke that down. Mr. Sharon, are you a pessimistic? You think no? You think the answer is no?
I'm pessimistic about it. It's not that I don't think UCF deserves to be in the top 25. I think they do, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay.
Yeah. So
we'll find out.
They should be like 20, 24, 25. That's where if I had a vote, that's where I would put them.
Well, as I wrote, and people will see, I won't give too much away. There's a couple spots available. Whether they can get one of those two spots, we'll see.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. We'll break that down on Tuesday morning. And then other stuff we got going on. We got the basketball recap. We mentioned the All-Decade Series coming out. You mentioned what we've got coming out. Plus, you can actually listen to Jeff's interview with Mike Tuck, right? That's archived on the Best of Beat of Sports on their site.
Yep. Going to pop that up there here in a little bit. And yeah, we'll get, like I said, the All-Decade teams. I got a full plate, man. It's good. I recorded the segment with you. The baby's down. She's sleeping right now, so I got some time to do it. So,
well, good.
Finally.
How does it feel to be on the other chair for a change?
I dig it. I like being asked questions, and because it makes me feel important.
Welcome to my world.
Nice.
Now you know I failed. Very good. Good answer. All right, Jeffrey. Good stuff, buddy. We'll be in touch. We'll do this again next week. Maybe you'll be back now. That to be determined.
Yeah, we'll leave that up to the editors.
That's right. That's Jeff Sharon. For Brian Murphy, I'm Eric Lopez. Thank you again for tuning in. Again, follow us, folks, on Twitter, social media, all the latest news in UCF. BlackandGoldBanneret.com is your home, of course, from the website standpoint. Of course, UCF_Banneret on Twitter. You can follow us on Facebook, and of course, subscribe to us for all the episodes. Any episodes you missed, any episodes forthcoming, you'll know. You can subscribe on your favorite podcast devices. For Jeff and Murph, I'm Eric. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of the Black and Gold Banneret.